3 days from now would have marked 67 years of the Tropicana. It's a hotel casino with a storied past. And I sat down with two local historians to talk about the Tropicana's ties to the mob, Hollywood legends, jazz greats, and glamorous showgirls, of course.
When they opened, they really were more luxurious than the other hotels.
Gaming historian David Schwartz says the Tropicana Las Vegas was once called the Tiffany of the Strip. Some of the earliest acts included singer Eddie Fisher, who was a regular, his first wife, legendary strip performer Debbie Reynolds, and a striptease revue starring actress Jane Mansfield. But all that shine did come with a little tarnish.
Frank Costello, who was notorious as one of the big mobsters in New York, was one of the big early investors and was connected to the property.
I sat down with history professor Michael Green for a colorful conversation of the storied past of this legendary strip resort casino. He says casino operations at the Tropicana were corrupt from the start.
Originally, a casino guy named Dandy Phil Castell. And if your nickname's Dandy Phil, you probably have connections, and he did. He was tied to Frank Costello in New York. He was tied to the New Orleans crime family.
But J. Kell Housels, owner of the Las Vegas Club, was hired to operate the Tropicana and turn things around.
And it turned out the mob really didn't know what it was doing there and was going to go under. And Housels came in, took it over, cleared them out, and ran the Tropicana, followed by his son Kell Jr., into the late 60s.
Housels Jr. traveled to Paris, France, to negotiate a deal that would bring what would become the most notable act yet. The Folies Bergère, which was introduced by Lou Walters, father of legendary journalist Barbara Walters.
And Folies Bergère was there for many years.
Folies Bergère was there for just under 50 years, and they went with the production show because the Stardust had opened the Lido de Paris, and that was big. The other thing is, with a production show like that, you don't have one star you depend on.
Although some future stars were featured in the Folies Bergère, including the debut of magicians Siegfried and Roy and Lance Burton.
Another act they had there was a dance couple named Zoni and Claire. Claire was Nancy Claire, who became Nancy Housels.
Yes.
And
from the ballet.
She was one of the key people in creating our ballet theater.
Yes.
So in a funny sort of way, besides the memories of the Tropicana, we have this great cultural institution. And she and her husband were also important in starting the Smith Center.
They also had an elegant showroom called the Blue Room, where some of the biggest names in jazz performed, like Benny Goodman, Louis Armstrong, and Count Basie. But in the 1970s, an FBI investigation uncovered more mob connections.
The Tropicana was begun by the mob, then it was cleaned out, but the mob came back after the Housels sold it. And it was connected to the Kansas City mob led by Nick Savella and his brother Carl Savella.
The FBI eventually uncovered a skimming operation at the resort involving Joe Agosto, the owner at the time of the Folies Bergère, who was working to siphon money to Kansas City.
And eventually, through wiretaps, they caught all this stuff, and it was part of a big operation that targeted the heads of the Chicago, Kansas City, and Milwaukee crime families, and the head of the Teamsters Union.
Eventually, Green says the hotel chain Ramada Inn, taking over the Tropicana in the 1980s, was considered a major step toward cleaning out organized crime and making casinos a clean industry.
Do you think Las Vegas will miss it as a hotel?
I think people who've been around Las Vegas for a while will miss it. The unfortunate thing is, we who do history and believe in historic preservation will miss it, and we don't like to see it happen. So we have to understand people don't come to Las Vegas for the experience of going to a hotel built in the 1950s. That's not why they're here. So what we have to hope is the signage goes to neon. Other things go to the Mob Museum or the State Museum or the County Museum. And they preserve the papers and they record the memories. And there are a lot of memories of the Tropicana.